Good morning. Well, you live in a country that is resource rich, and nobody can deny that. And still, 45% of the GDP of Canada comes from the international trade. 45%. However, majority of our trade, 87% is the US, and second largest trading partner is European Union, naturally headed by England, and now England has left European Union. So the significance of the recently signed agreement, CETA, loses much of its value. Nevertheless, CETA was giving nightmares to the government. And despite all the spade work done by the earlier conservative government, there were a lot of hiccups. Nevertheless, given the political jockeying, ultimately the agreement was signed. But that's not the end of the road. The ratification of the agreement is still to be done. Belgium is still not very happy. England, as we know, is going to leave after the Brexit decision, European Union. Coming down to the two other major issues relating to the foreign trade and the treaties thereof are NAFTA and TPP. The fate of NAFTA is hanging in balance. Bernie Sanders agreed to support Hillary Clinton on the specific agreement that if she becomes the president, NAFTA would be reworked or abrogated. Donald Trump has been crying from the housetops that NAFTA is anti-American and should be consigned to the grave at the earliest opportunity. So whosoever becomes the president, the fate of NAFTA is not very bright. It is, even if it's not allowed to die, it would be put in the cold storage. Naturally, Canada has to find the new avenues. And Harper government was prudent enough, and so is the Liberal government that way, I must give it compliment, that TPP was the way out. But now with the American election, the fate of TPP is also hanging by a very slim thread. If TPP had been signed, then Canada would have an opening into 14 countries, the Pacific Rim countries, and that's a huge market. And there they would have met with preferential treatment. Now with the CETA still being in limbo till the ratification is done, the fate of NAFTA and TPP hanging in balance, what is the plan B of the government? Naturally, whenever we take a project, we always have plan B, plan C. We go to a war, we have plan A, B, C, D. We take up any undertaking, we always have a second option and a third option. What happens if it fails? What's the way out? How to energize our resources to create a new avenue, a new path to progress. Till now, the government hasn't shown any significant inclination towards identifying plan B. So I thought, okay, let's look at the parameters and see whether plan B is possible, feasible and desirable or not. Well, as far as the desirability of plan B is concerned, that nobody can deny. It's always better to have a second option. You go for a minor thing. Even say purchase of a car, you have a second option. If I don't get this, I'll get this. And here we are dealing with the billions of dollars, with 45% of our GDP. So not having a plan B is not very sensible. Now, we have been putting all the eggs in one basket. And even my grandmom used to tell me not to do so. But still, 87% of our trade is with US. And that, with the abrogation of NAFTA, would come down sharply. We have signed agreements with China, with India, but still they have not been implemented. As I said, our largest second trade partner is European Union. But is that the real market? The real market is Asia and Africa. The real market is not Europe. That's a saturated market. The people with a surplus money are in India and China, Japan, Korea. The hunger for the consumer goods is in South Asia and Far East Asia and in Africa. We are sealing our doors to Africa with the proposed sending of the peace troops to Mali and other parts of Africa, which is annoying those people. So, what should be the second option? The ideal would be the Pacific Rim and South Asia. There are two reasons for that. A, most of the immigrants come from that region and they have naturally ties back home, so the trade can be facilitated through those contacts. Secondly, with our huge coastline, the Pacific is the best opening for us. And the Pacific Rim countries have the maximum of disposable income. Only that country can be on our horizon for trade, where the people have disposable income. A, that is the capacity to spend. Second is the will to spend. If you have the capacity but do not have the will to spend, however large the disposable income may be, that will not be translated into a trade deal. But the people living in India, in Pakistan, in Sri Lanka, people living in Philippines, people living in South Korea, people living in Japan, not only have disposable income, but also inclination. The second point is that despite all its issues, Canada does have a reputation for quality, which is undeniable. And those people with a disposable income have a penchant for quality goods today. They are no longer satisfied with the shoddy goods. The research done by UNCTAD, United Nations Commission on Trade and Tariffs, has very clearly stated there is a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift is that the newly rich, the people who have come to the money now, are much more concerned with quality. And when the Canadian quality is better, they will definitely opt for that. So the second option, the plan B which I was talking about, should concentrate on these countries, the Pacific Rim countries and South Asian countries. With China, we have a very adverse trade. We export much less than we import. That has to be rectified. So plan B should have three ingredients. A, rectification of the trade with China so that our exports there expand more. But that's a very dicey game. With manipulation of their currency, the Chinese would always manage to have the upper hand. And Canada would have no role to play. Secondly, our trade with countries like Philippines and especially Japan is minimal. As a matter of fact, during my discussions with some economists and the government decision makers during the Harper regime, I was able to convince them that Japan is an ideal trading partner. Japan would be a great country not only because of sending trade but also for investment. And that is why when the TPP concept came up, the government jumped on it and was among the very first to sign the MOU. Because, as I said, with the 14 countries, including Brunei, the richest country in the world, we were opening our relationship. But that, as I said, is now in limbo. So the government has to sign up individual trade agreements with the major countries. With India, they have been thinking of signing, negotiations are being conducted, there have been trade missions coming and going, and hopefully we'll have a free trade agreement operational with India shortly. But then till now we have been ignoring Pacific Rim countries, particularly South Korea, Japan, Philippines, Brunei, and that is where our aim should be. Plan B should identify A, the needs of those countries and our capacity to fulfill those needs. B, to relate to those countries in a bilateral exchange of knowledge, products, and services. Another thing that Plan B should take into consideration is that goods are not that important today. They are important because they make your presence felt in the market. But much more important are the services. And the Canadians till now have an excellent record in services. Now let's look at the services they can render. A, disaster management. This region, both Pacific Rim region and South Asian region, need disaster management badly. Just now see what's the condition of Delhi and other parts of the world, country. Delhi is practically a gas chamber. So is Mumbai becoming one. So that disaster management, our teams can go train there and earn revenue. They can also supply the products for mitigating, testing and mitigating of the pollution level and helping them come out of the disaster region. So that's first. Second is the water management, wastewater especially. And that shall not only be water management, that's even a solid waste management. The solid waste management in this country is the strongest field where we can operate. And that's the need of those places, not of Japan, but of Philippines, India, not China, but then Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. Look at the population, 1.25 billion in India, 190 million in Pakistan, 210 million in Bangladesh. Only that compact, what I'll call it Indian subcontinent, has a huge demand, a voracious demand, and then can pay for it. So first we said was disaster management. Second was environmental pollution control, wastewater management, solid waste management, and apart from that, we can also help them in mining, infrastructure upkeep, and infrastructure development. And another issue, which is extremely important and is related to the second part, is reforestation programs, horticulture development programs, Now imagine, here the growing season in agriculture is 100 days and we have 2 crops in that. The quantity produced is also much more hectare. So the same technologies which we are adopting here, in case they are transferred there, would be a boon to those people. So the next part of the plan B would be technology transfer. Now technology transfer would have certain bases. Technology forecasting, what's going to be required. The technologies present today are not very important. They are important, but they are on the way out. So we need forecasting. Then we need evaluation and assessment. And then third part would be transfer. So that has to be done. And one thing more is knowledge transfer. Stop being a closely held reserve of knowledge. Transfer it. So these should be the parameters of the plan B. And the target countries, as I said, 14 of the Pacific Rim, 4 of the South Asian region. The services, we have said, technologies, transfers, especially EST technologies and agriculture technologies. And then the storehouse of knowledge and knowledge-based technologies. If that plan B is implemented, you can be sure that the GDP of this country would rise at least by 15 to 17%. The forecast is 1%. Now from 1% to 15%, even at the lowest level, is quite a jump. And then you are establishing yourself as a leader over those countries. In the age that we are coming, the knowledge would be transferred either way. Either you give it or they'll get it by re-engineering. And reverse engineering. So why not skip that task of reverse engineering? They are going to get it, so give it to them. And when you give it to them, you charge them. But when they get it by reverse engineering, you don't get anything. So we identify the target countries, which I have done. We identify the services to be transferred, that I have done. The next step, the most important step, is the government should start working on that. And work in a way to convince those people that it's a win-win situation. The aim is not to exploit those countries, but to have a win-win situation where both countries benefit. Tell them the sociological benefits, environmental benefits, economic benefits, health benefits, and pari passu, naturally, the benefits to Canada. But is the government listening? Are the mandarins open to the suggestions? I hope so. And I trust the plan B, as I have delineated, would receive consideration, and not only consideration but be acted upon. That way lies the salvation of Canada, not only by getting family class immigrants and refugees. We need a paradigm shift in our vision as well. And economic needs are the priority needs. Economic progress, economic abundance is the need of the hour. And that can only be done by diversifying to the new markets, new places, and new categories of services. Let's see. Thank you. Have a nice day.